Peace happens when the two sides not just stop fighting, they stop wishing to fight. You care about peace? You care about love? Finish the war. You'll save lives. But you have to use your head, not your heart. What is the greatest deterrent to war? Now, the deterrent. What is the greatest thing that prevents two countries from fighting with each other? So the Rebbe says always correctly, and I'm not disagreeing with the Rebbe, if you want not to have to fight a war, be strong, right? But that's the truth. Now, what's the political truth? The political truth is two nations cannot fight if they have too much to lose. Which is why, think about this in common sense, rich countries are far less likely to go to war than poor countries are. Rich people are far less likely to fight with their neighbors than poor people are. Because they have too much to lose. That's the way it is. It doesn't make them better, it's just how it is. If you live in a country with a lot of wealth, and if you're a rich person in that country, and the example for this, and I don't want to have conversations, but there was a guy, we call him an anti-Semite, he probably wasn't, it was Joe Kennedy. Joe Kennedy did not want to fight. Why? Because he had what to lose. Schmendek had nothing to lose, you understand? If you have a lot of money, two countries with a lot of wealth are far less likely that the false peace is going to hold stronger if there's money involved. Think about the Middle East, right? Who wants to make peace with Israel? Saudi Arabia, because they have a lot to lose. Who's happy to fight with Israel? Yemen. Why? They got nothing to lose. They're a poor country. No, it really works that way. So false peace could work, but it's not going to work because people are nice guys. You understand? False peace could work if you bribe both sides. If I have a reason not to fight. Israel does not want to fight. Why? Israel's a rich country. Israel's a peaceful country. Israel doesn't have a choice. They're fighting for their life. They're fighting against people who want to die. It's very hard. They don't care. If this is going to sound nuts, if the Arabs in Gaza and the Arabs in Lebanon had a lot of money, they would be so anxious to become members of Iran's terrorism because there's too much to lose. So a false peace could hold. It could. But the combatants have to have an ulterior motivation. You understand? So countries with wealth are far less likely to go to war than countries without wealth. People with wealth, if you have too much to lose, it's not worth to fight. People don't fight because they want to be right. People fight because they want to gain something. And if you're going to fight, and even if you win, you lost, it's not worth it. It's just not worth it. So false peace works. And false peace is a good idea. Don't misunderstand. Ceasefire. In a scenario, this is geopolitics, this has nothing to do with my man. I'm should get fired for this because I'm teaching you limudei chol. Ceasefire. Two countries saying the war is not over, but we're stopping the shooters. But we're not making a peace, we're making a ceasefire. Could hold for years, hold for centuries, for decades. If the two combatants are better served by not fighting than fighting, it could work. The problem with Israel is that when Israel ceasefires, that's a message to the Arabs that they can fight again. We're dealing with an enemy that has nothing to lose. And an enemy that you have to defeat. And the classic example of that is the Germans in World War I. For those who know the history, the Germans in World War I were not defeated. There was a ceasefire. And that's what was World War II. What had to happen in World War I was what happened in World War II. Unconditional surrender. The Germans had to be defeated, and the Germans had to know they lost. That FDR, the President of the United States, said to Eisenhower, at the end of the Second World War, you make sure they lose bad. You can't just win the Germans, you have to defeat the Germans. Unconditional surrender, because the Germans had to know they lost. Because unless the Germans knew that they lost, they're going to see the ceasefire as an opportunity to fight again. That's what Israel is dealing with. Ceasefire can hold if the two sides have a lot to lose. There's room for it. But it's bluff. It's not peace. It's just not war. And by the way, not war is pretty good. In the real world, we don't believe in people fighting wars. The worst single invention of mankind is war. Organized killing sanctioned by governments and law. It's unbelievable. War is so sick, it's not to be imagined. Unfortunately, it's a part of life, part of our history. But a false shalom, if it holds, is good. If it doesn't hold, then nobody gains. What's true peace? What's true peace? Huh? And again, I'm still speaking geopolitics, but we're getting closer to the Maimon now. If the two sides fight a war, and when the war is over, they push it, make friends. Now, how could that happen? Okay, it's a great example, but that was it was not pushed at all. After the Civil War for 50, the Civil War, I have a whole opinion about it. The South is still breages about the Civil War, but okay, it's all the same.
A better example is probably the Americans and the British after the war ended. After the war ended.
Okay, it's a good example, but it's a very good example. I think the best example is the United States and Japan after the Second World War. The hatred that we had to them and they had to us was unimaginable. And we were culturally so different. After the Second World War, America and Japan became friends. There's a lot of reasons why. And again, if you know the history, there's a guy named MacArthur, Douglas MacArthur, he was our representative. He was like the king in Japan. He was very, very smart about how he dealt with the Japanese. He didn't punish them. He didn't take revenge. He respected them. He allowed the Japanese to be people again, and we gained from it. Why? Because America cares about only one thing. What does America care about? Money. A rich Japan means we can do business and make more money. It's very simple. But there's a lot of reasons why. After the Second World War, America and Japan made peace. I'll tell you what I think is a very significant part of the reason. The atomic bomb. The atomic bomb told the Japanese that they're idiots for starting up with America. They're total fools. But they're total fools and idiots of America that they cursed the day that they started the war, and they swore to themselves that as long as they live, they'll never fight with America again. In other words, peace can happen when one side wins decisively and the other side loses decisively, and there's no ceasefire. A ceasefire means that we're taking a break in the shooting, so I can lick my wounds and you can lick my wounds. I can rearm and you can we'll fight again. You know the history of Europe? In Europe, they fought a war for 100 years. Can you please tell me how you fight a war for 100 years? In Europe, they fought a war for 30 years, for 7 years. The 100-Year War, the 30s, the famous wars. You guys learned this in high school. How do you fight for 100 years? You don't fight for 100 years. You have ceasefire, you fight again. The war never finishes. Because nobody wins, because nobody loses. The Second World War was different than the First World War because there were clear winners and clear losers. It was over, you ended it, finished. That's a form of peace. When we show the Japanese that we have a weapon that makes the war so unfair that they can't fight with us. If you're using guns and I'm using guns, we can keep fighting. But if you are using guns and I'm using atomic bombs, the enemy doesn't want to be your enemy anymore. That is peace. It's not a compromise. Not let's sign a piece of paper. We're going to stop shooting each other for the next 15 minutes, and after that, if we decide to shoot, we're allowed to shoot. Peace happens in many ways, and one of the ways is if one side really wins, the other side really loses, then they can come together. It's not a compromise.
It's not friends, though.
But they become friends if you have no reason to fight with your opponent. I mean, what America did to B'chlal. I'm an American. I don't know if you're an American or not. America's a pretty kooky place. Not pretty kooky. It's a very kooky place. But America is one of the kindest nations in the history of mankind. The way America fought its wars is historic. What we did to the Germans and to the Japanese is unbelievable. Only America has that in themselves, to fight with an enemy, finish the war, and then be friends with them. It's an American thing. Trust me. Why should you trust me? Yeah, trust me. Wait.
It sounds like Hashem held the mountain over the Eden and said, yeah, they're friends, but because there's way more to lose if they don't.
Fine. You just made this into religion, and you made me nervous, and you confused me. I'm talking politics. America won a war decisively and made friends with their enemies and created a peaceful world. America doesn't get nearly enough credit for the whole peace in the world. It's not Europe. It's America. Because Americans are good people. That's my opinion. I still hold it. They're still crazy and stupid, but good. Europeans are smart, Europeans are normal, but they're vengeful, they don't forgive, they don't forget. Americans are forgiving. Anyway, this is not Negiyah. Keep the kaf aleim hakik out for a little while, do me a favor. Okay, so peace happens when the two sides not just stop fighting, they stop wishing to fight. That's peace. Chassidus, b'chlal Torah, but Chassidus especially, doesn't even deal with the first kind of peace. The first kind of peace is what we're calling ceasefire, where two nations are beating each other up, and they said to stop fighting, and maybe the ceasefire holds, maybe not. But if the ceasefire holds, the only reason it's holding is not because they're friends, it's because they have too much to lose. Like I explained to you before, if you're a rich country, you would rather not fight because you have more to lose. Real peace is where the two enemies become friends. It's over forever. And Chassidus begins its discussion on Shalom here. Pada b'Shalom means that the war is over, not in the kind of way that tomorrow you're going to fight again. That's not Pada b'Shalom. You fight a war, the war is finished, and it's not happening, it's over, finished, ended. And on a very practical level, that explains Mikrav. You fought a war, the war finished, and even though you fought a war that was so vicious and so bitter and so personal, when it's over, it's Pada b'Shalom. Pada b'Shalom means this war will never be fought again because the combatants are not enemies anymore, whatever the reason is. So I just described to you two ideas. Maybe it wasn't clear, but I described to you two ideas. Stopping a war in a way of compromise, which is also called peace, and it's also a good thing, but it's not real peace, it's phony peace. And stopping a war in the kind of way where the war is mamish over. In the minds and the hearts of the combatants, they're not fighting. That's real Pada b'Shalom. Now the way the Maimorim talk about Pada b'Shalom is, they go higher and higher and higher and higher in this idea of Shalom. Okay? So, as we learn this Maimon, we're never going back to ceasefires, okay? We're ceasing with the ceasefires, you understand? I said this to you preliminarily. I gave you the introduction of false peace, but it's not coming up again. The Maimon is Torah. Torah speaks in ideal terms, in real terms, in absolute terms. Torah speaks about only peace that's real peace. Real peace means when the fight is not suspended for a time, the fight is finished forever. That's tight Pada b'Shalom. In this Maimed, there's going to be levels in Pada b'Shalom. In other words, how much peace is there? How unified have the two combatants become? That becomes the issue of this Maimed. If the baseline, if the beginning of it is two sides are fighting, and the fight is, not they're interrupting the fighting, but the fight is over, that's Pada b'Shalom. In this itself, there's going to be madregas upon madregas upon madregas upon madregas. Does anybody wish to ask any questions or make any comments? And I mean it. Go ahead, talk loud.
Does that mean compromise in life isn't good and the way to go?
Say it again, please.
Does that mean compromise in life is not good and not the way to go, and someone should aim for like true peace without compromise?
I think compromise is a very good way to go. But compromise cannot be the kind of compromise which is simply delaying the inevitable. If you make compromise, and the cost of that compromise is that tomorrow you're going to make a second compromise, and the third compromise, until you're going to be so sick of compromise that you're going to hit the guy with both hands and both feet, that's compromise you shouldn't make. Compromise is very important. I said a false peace is good if it could work. Of course you want real peace. But if compromise works, it works. And Yisrael, using it as an example, they don't have a choice. Because their enemies are not going to let them. They're just not going to let them. Israel has to defeat them like we defeated the Japanese. They have to curse the day they started up with us. Not just Hezbollah, not just Gaza, Iran. Because it's not going to end until that happens. Everybody understands it, but nobody likes it. Because it's not nice when people fight. But letting this thing fester like a cancer has gotten us to this point. But compromise is a very good idea.
So compromise could lead to true peace?
Compromise, that's tricky. But I think over time, compromise can lead to true peace. In other words, if people make a ceasefire in a war, and they have too much to lose, so they don't fight again, the chances of the combatants making peace is not great, but the children can. In other words, if you hate somebody deeply, you can't sit at the same table with him. But your kid doesn't hate him so deeply. He didn't get killed by him. You know what I'm saying? So it could lead to drill. It just takes, practically speaking, it takes time. Okay? Any other questions or comments? We're good? We're good, or what's this rabbi talking about? I know class I'm taking. Geopolitics or Chassidus?
If someone wins me, if I fight with someone and like he wins, like whatever, he wins the fight, I'm not gonna love him.
You're not gonna love him.
I'm gonna hate him.
You're gonna hate him. But what if after you finish fighting and you put down your weapons, he treats you with respect? So you're gonna say, why are you being treated with respect? Why are you being nice to me? You're tricking me? He says, no, if you're not gonna fight, I'll be your friend. That changes it, right? Goyim understood that. Goyim, you're not an American, right? You got an accent, right? You're not an American. After the Second World War, there were people who wanted to make Germany into a farm. They wanted to make Japan, there wouldn't be a motor car. America made those countries strong. And that's how we became friends with our enemies. You understand what I'm saying? It takes time. But you have to mean it. You can't bluff. And of course, Americans, in all these wonderful good things that they do, one thing is for sure true, they made a lot of money. Okay. Now girls, now listen to me carefully. Go ahead, talk loud and
The key
clear.
is though you have to actually be strong.
Of course. The weaker one can't make peace.
Right. So how do you always know if you're on the stronger side? Like,
Have an atomic bomb, that's it. Now, girls, I want to say what I just said in more Hasidic language, okay? I spoke to you very down to earth. This false peace, we're finished with false peace. We're done with it. We're not going back to it, okay? And this true peace. True peace means the war is over. Neither side wants to fight again. Now I'm going to give you a philosophical idea, okay? This you should write down. The philosophical idea is real peace cannot happen unless there is a secret weapon. A secret weapon. Real peace cannot happen until one of the two sides has a weapon that makes the war completely imbalanced. If you have 100,000 soldiers and your enemy has 80,000 soldiers, and you have tanks that weigh 22 tons, and they have tanks, which is World War II numbers, and they have tanks that weigh 19 tons. So one side is stronger than the other, but you can still fight. But if one side is an atomic bomb, and the other is using conventional weapons, that's not a fight anymore. For there to be real peace, there has to be a real imbalance. One side has to be not a little stronger than the other, has to be so much stronger than the other that there cannot be a war. It's impossible, you can't fight. So how do you say that in Chassidus? In Lashon from Torah? In Chassidus you would say you can't have shalom without oir from above. For there to be peace in a place of machlokes, right? How did I start today's class? You can't have shalom without machlokes. For to be shalom without machlokes, you always need an oir, a higher light. A higher light is Hebrew for an atomic bomb. It makes it so imbalanced that it's not a war. And that's the process that I want you to sort of digest in this class, okay? Emes Shalom, true peace, is when the war is finished and the two sides can, at least in theory, become friends. The key to that is that one side has a weapon that the other side cannot match, and in Lashon Chassidus, a higher light, something which comes from another place that enters into the scenario that breaks the machlokes. It breaks the war. And that's the key concept in Shalom. The key concept in Shalom is a higher light. In plain English, it's an atomic bomb. It's a super weapon. In Lashon HaKodesh, in Lashon Torah, it's a power that you have that comes from higher that makes the war a non-war. And I'm going to give you a funny example. It is a funny example. The example is David HaMelech. David HaMelech, unfortunately, spent his entire life fighting wars. At the very, very end of his life, he fought the most miserable and vicious and personal battle of his life. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? With his own son, with Avshalom. Now, some people say that Pada b'Shalom Nafshi b'Krovdi Ki b'Rab Ha'imad goes on that war. Why? Because David had a secret weapon. David had an atomic bomb. What was David's secret weapon? Anybody know what secret weapon was? Kill him. He was 67 years old. He was an old man. He had no koyach. He didn't go fight. His soldiers fought. David HaMelech sat in his room and said to him, and he cried. And he got into the heads of Avshalom's army. David HaMelech's Tilim got into the opponent. The Gemara says, you'll see it in this Maimah later on, that Achei Avshalom is Spalal L'Shleim Shalom. David and Avshalom are fighting a vicious war. Civil wars are the worst kind of wars. They're very personal. Very personal. There's a father and a son involved in it, and Avshalom would have killed David in a heartbeat if he caught him. He would have killed his own father. He was a Russia. Avshalom was. And Avshalom's soldiers are going out to fight and all praying that nothing happens to David HaMelech. How do you fight like that? How do you fight with an enemy and you pray that the king of the enemy doesn't die? You can't fight. In other words, David got into their head in the kind of way that he took the sword out of their head. Psychologically, they were not in a position to fight. That's the atomic bomb. That's the Pada b'Shalom of that story. Two sides are fighting. If they're equally matched, there will never be Pada b'Shalom. There can only be ceasefire. They can fight again. Sometimes the ceasefire will hold, which is compromise, and compromise is a good thing if it's going to work. Pada b'Shalom means one of the two sides has a secret weapon. The secret weapon makes the war a non-war. The best example I have for this is an atomic bomb. Everybody can understand it. And in Torah, there are a series of examples of Pada b'Shalom. And the first one is David sat in his room, wherever he was hiding out, outside of Yerushalayim, and he goes, Tilim Ted. He was saying, Tilim. And his enemy soldiers were worried about David HaMelech. He can't fight like that. And that's what brought about the Pada b'Shalom. Okay? So now, girls, we have two ideas. Two ideas. I know I'm going slow, but there's a lot more than you think. You think I'm just talking, I'm actually teaching. Because if you're not paying attention, you're going to come back to the next class and you're not going to understand what you missed. Because it sounds like a fabrengen. I'm not fabrengen, I'm teaching. There's two things you have to know about Shalom. Shalom means it's decisive. Decisive. It's over. And Shalom cannot happen without a secret weapon. It can't. Shalom means one side has a light that renders the battlefield a non-battlefield. It's not fair. It's not fair. It's not balanced in any way, shape, or form. Those are the rules of Shalom. So we have a series of Maimorim. They're going to talk us through the process of Shalom, okay? And these are the guidelines. Number one, Shalom does not mean ceasefire. It doesn't mean stopping to fight. Shalom means that the two sides literally become friends. And the key requirement for that is that one of the two sides has a weapon that makes the battlefield a non-battlefield, and in Torah terms, it's a higher oil, it's a higher light, which renders the opponent not able to fight with you. Just 1 second. Go ahead.
We technically do have a weapon that's stronger. We have Hashem on our side. We have miracles.
I know, but against that, we have this Jewish cowardice, this Jewish fear of blood. We don't want to kill. We don't want to kill.
When it comes to our enemy.
Yeah, we don't want to kill. Jews are really not good killers. I mean, they're very good at it when they have to do it. But they don't like to kill. Jews are compassionate people. When you fight a war, there's an issa de'eraisa to have mercy. It's an issa. But in order for you to kill people, it's very hard.
Not when it's people that have killed your people.
You so quickly forget. Go to Israel, see the demonstrations. Yidden are good people. They're better than Americans. And they're crazier.
I highly doubt that anyone...
You highly doubt? Israel's torn apart.
If anyone would see a Hamas member on the streets, they would kill him.
You're so wrong. You're so wrong. The old cliche question. If you could get the Hitler baby, would you kill him?
Yes.
You wouldn't. I give you my word. Because you're Jewish.
If you know what he's gonna do.
Yeah, you know everything. Such a beautiful bubbler. Other people will kill any baby because they don't care. It's Yidden, this is the whole thing. When they ever screamed about it, just tell you, you care about peace? You care about love? Finish the war. You'll save lives. But you have to use your head, not your heart. We forget so quick. So many people think it's a Rahmanas in the Palestinians. It is a Rahmanas in the Palestinians. But if we stop now, we're going to have to do it in 20 years again. And it's going to be much worse. And we keep making the same mistake. Israel continuously makes these. There's a famous video, and I don't have time to talk to you about this, where the Rebbe wanted to take the Messiah after Yom Kippur with Damascus. And they gave the Rebbe a bunch of reasons why they couldn't. And the Rebbe's secretary, Rabbi Klein, was talking to this Machon from the Israeli government, and he hears the Rebbe saying in the background, in English, he's so upset. Big mistake! Big mistake! This mistake we paid for a year ago. 50 years ago, Israel didn't finish. You have to finish. You have to shame the Arabs. And you'll never have to fight with them again. You'll be their friend. But you say, let's be nice. Everything must be nice. You're setting up the next war. It's so hard for Yidden to do that. Because we're kind, compassionate people. But it's wrong. It's wrong. More Yidden die and more Goyim die. But trust me, it's a test. I'm so surprised how long Bibi has been fighting. You know what the pressure that he has to stop this fight? There's so many Israelis say, forget about it, we can't kill anymore. It's not about 1,300 hostages. It's not. It's not revenge. It's about peace. This has to stop. The day this war is over, Hamas is going to announce that it won. They're going to say they won. If there's one Hamas guy alive, he's going to hold up a flag and say, look, we defeated the Israelis. And he's going to believe it. That's not allowed to happen. They have to say, I'm sorry I started up with you, put the tail between the legs. And Israel has to make them do it. It's very hard for Jews to do that. It's very hard for Jews to do that. But this is how this ends. And everybody gains. The Arabs gain. And this is what I said, you have to be strong, you have to be tough. Imagine a rebbe talking about being tough and strong, killing people. Doesn't sound right? But it is. Because that's how it finishes. Anyway, no more geopolitics, yeah? Go ahead.
With atomic bombs, it's not even about being stronger. It's that no one wants to mess with another country if they have the atomic
That's the
bomb.
same thing, my friend. It's exactly the same thing. It's just different words. That's the point. Go ahead.
Does this also apply like in a regular, like two people having a like us?
Yes?
Because that doesn't seem like the weaker person could ever. Doesn't like they don't have the responsibility to make peace.
Well, responsibility is one word.
They don't have that.
Opportunity is. You're right. You see, when people fight, people get stuck. In other words, you even forget why you're fighting. You're just fighting. And you can't give in. Every situation is different, but it's true. The ability to end a fight in a way that the two become friends lies with the one who's stronger. It's true.
That's not like fair.
It's my friend. You should be in my house for 15 minutes. Fairness ends in nursery, not in kindergarten. If you're lucky. Fairness is the biggest lie. We live in an America that's screaming the whole day, you have to make things fair, and they're destroying our country. There's no such thing as fairness. Fairness doesn't exist. There's right and wrong.
If you're the weaker person and you want to make peace, can you?
Nope. You can try. You can't.
Well, maybe if you want it, then you can become stronger.
If you show weakness, it's going to get worse. It's very tricky. You can walk away, you can make compromises. You're right, what you said is true. That to make peace in the way that the two enemies become friends is on the superior partner. It's true. Go ahead.
I was gonna say like Hillel and Shammai were really good friends, but it wasn't that one was right and the other was wrong ever.
Well, Hill and Shammai were not fighting with guns and knives. They were learning Torah.
We're just talking about like Machon is like fight like.
Of course. Well, I think it was like fight, yeah. Like cinema was not them, like fight, yes. Not like Hill and Shammai. Okay, now, girls, I got to teach you something, right? So I told you two things today. I guess I have three things. Number one, there is a place for compromised peace, which is not real peace. Torah does not discuss it. Number two, real peace is where the two enemies become friends. And number three, for that to happen, one of the sides has to have a weapon that renders the war a non-war, and then there can be peace. Okay? But I also told you can't have peace unless there's machlekes. You can only have peace when there's division. In a universe where there is only God, there can't be machlekes. So let's think about this in religious terms. You have a Yetzer Tov and Yetzer Hara. You have Kedusha and Klipa. That's the ultimate war. What's Pada B'Shalom Nafshi Mikrov Liki B'Rab Ma'yamadi between Yetzer Tov and Yetzer Hara, between Kedusha and Klipa and all of that? So I guess on some level the answer is when you become a tzaddik. Right? How do you become a tzaddik? You have a higher light. Until you become a tzaddik, every ceasefire is simply waiting for the next fight. So in us, there is a scenario of machlekes, which is never going to end in shalom. That's a beinani. And in us, there's a scenario we can have brother b'shalom, which is the madrega of tzaddik. And the same is true in our relationship with the world. The world around us is full of klipa. Some klipas we can correct, some klipas you have to stay away from. In our struggle in this world, what is pada mitech machlekes and what is pada mitech shalom? If we're fighting with elam hazeh, we're struggling. The world tests us, and we're affected adversely by the tests of the world. As long as we are still tested by the world, even if today I won, that's not pada b'shalom. That's machlekes. Pada b'shalom means that I make peace with the world. The world becomes my friend. And this, girls, is the reason there's levels in Shalom. There's madregas in Shalom. How powerful is your atomic bomb? How transcendent is your light from above, which is the basis for the peace? How comprehensive is the consequential peace? In other words, how one are the two sides becoming? And there's levels in it. You follow?